personality, providing the potential for the leader to acquire power. I then selectively explore aspects of the exercise of that power and the structures that made it possible. Each chapter concludes with an assessment of the leader's legacy. The introduction outlines the framework of inquiry and poses a number of general propositions about the conditions and exercise of power, which are then addressed comparatively in the conclusion. I have kept notes and references to a minimum. This is a book about history, if recent and often still painful history. Europe has moved on from the times depicted here, and with every regard for some daunting present-day problems, overwhelmingly for the better, especially if we contemplate the horrors of the first half of the 20th century. Recent events have highlighted social and political themes, racism, imperialism, slavery, gender and identity issues, which have taken on new or at any rate different forms of expression than was the case in the previous century. And politics is no longer a man's world, as it once was, something much to be welcomed. Only one of the case studies in this book is of a woman, a reflection that politics in the 20th century was very much a male preserve. No person of colour is included, a reminder that European politics in the 20th century was not just a man's world, but a white man's world. The changes in our own times are themselves an indication that forces far beyond even the most powerful political leader induce long-term social transformation. History offers few, if any, persuasive prescriptions for the future. It does, however, suggest that politics in the hands of powerful personalities who claim to have a panacea for current ills and offer sweeping change to bring about radical improvement is rarely desirable. Be careful what you wish for is a useful notion to keep in mind when considering the claims of potential political leaders. For my own part, I would be happy to avoid charismatic personalities altogether in favour of leaders who, if less colourful, can offer competent, effective governance based on collective deliberation and well-founded, rational decisions aimed at improving the lives of all citizens. But that is probably another definition of utopia. Ian Kershaw, Manchester, October 2021. Introduction. The Individual and Historical Change. How far was Europe's turbulent 20th century determined by the actions of political leaders? Did these leaders make Europe's 20th century, or were they made by it? These questions are part of a wider question. How important are individuals in the shaping of history? Do they fundamentally alter its course? Or do they at best divert the tide into new, temporary channels? We often instinctively and unquestioningly presume that political leaders were more or less personally, implicitly it sometimes seems, even solely, responsible for determining the historical path that was taken. But how and why were they in a position to act as they did? What constraints did they face? What pressures were they under? What backing or opposition conditioned their actions? In what settings did the leaders of quite different types of political system thrive? And how important was the role of personality? How far did this colour even determine crucial policy decisions? To what extent did political leaders personally, through freely taken decisions, effect the change they came to represent? These questions apply to democratic as well as to authoritarian leaders. The question of the individual's impact on historical change has often and repeatedly preoccupied historians. Indeed, not just historians. Leo Tolstoy devoted numerous pages of his epic War and Peace, published in 1869, to philosophical reflection on the role of the individual will in shaping historical events, and by emphasizing fate, attempting to refute the notion that these are determined by great men. Indirectly, the question has lain close to the center of historical inquiry ever since the study of history became a professional discipline in the 19th century. But while it has often been raised as a theoretical or philosophical issue, it is seldom confronted directly and empirically.